Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for February 28th, 2018. On today's show, we're going to be diving into a bunch of news, including the Men in Black reboot, the Rocketeer animated series, where Solo falls in the Star Wars Galaxy timeline, Atlanta Season 2 early buzz, the Snowpiercer TV series, and a lawsuit involving Moviepass. And in the spoiler room, we'll talk about some interesting Westworld Season 2 casting, and we'll also have a little bit of water cooler from Ben. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief, Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer, Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And Slash Film Writer, Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, before we get started, let's go over by the virtual water cooler, because Ben, I know you went to an interesting event last night, and I want to hear about it.
Yes, so last night I went to the UCB Theater, the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater here in Los Angeles, and I saw a live read of the movie Clue, the script for the movie Clue. They actually used the shooting script, so there were some jokes in here that didn't make the final cut in the movie. And this live read concept has been around for a while. Jason Reitman famously does a bunch of them at the Los Angeles, what is it called? LACMA, the Los Angeles... Yes. I don't remember what that actually stands for, but the Museum of Contemporary Art, maybe. I think that's what it is.
I think so.
But Jensen Karp, the guy who runs Gallery 1988, which is a really famous pop culture art gallery that we write about all the time on Slash Film, was the one who was sort of organizing this whole thing, and he put together this incredible cast for this live read of Clue. So Ben Schwartz played Wadsworth, who was the butler that Tim Curry played in the movie. Jillian Bell from 22 Jump Street was Mrs. White. Taron Killam from SNL was Mr. Green. Casey Wilson from Happy Endings was Mrs. Peacock. Paul F. Tompkins, podcaster extraordinaire, was Colonel Mustard. Paul Scheer, friend of the podcast, was Professor Plum. Ricky Lindholm was Miss Scarlet. Angela Trimber, who is in The Good Place and this really great movie called The Final Girls, she played Yvette, the maid. And Zach Gilford from Friday Night Lights played Mr. Body. And I mean, it was terrific. I'm probably gonna. I don't want to like drag on and on and on about this, but I'll just remind or suggest that everyone should just rewatch Clue as soon as possible, because that script is brilliant and the movie is fantastic. And these guys, every person in this cast did a really terrific job. I actually got some video of it, so I'm gonna try to write about it, at length, I guess, in the. A written version of the water cooler that will go up on slashfilm.com later this week, and I'll try to embed that video so you guys can get a sense of the vibe in the room and what it was like. And it was just really awesome. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Jensen Karp and all the actors for putting on such a great show.
And I know a lot of people outside of LA probably have never experienced or had the opportunity to experience something like this. You know, I got to see years ago Jason Reitman do his father Ivan Reitman's Ghostbusters with like Seth Rogen and a bunch of other people. Hearing this on paper is much different than seeing it, because you're actually kind of like seeing an alternate universe version of the movie with deleted scenes play out in front of you on stage. I mean, they are just sitting there in front with a table and with scripts, but there's all sorts of interesting observations. I mean, I'm wondering, when you were watching Clue, was there anything interesting that you don't remember being in the movie, or interesting angles that these new actors took? The direction
it was a lot of there were some jokes in there that got cut that stayed in the shooting script, that I think almost every joke that was cut for a reason and didn't quite work. I think one of the jokes in there that was Jillian Bell, who played Mrs. White, her character at one point says that guy something about like that guy got a hole in the head and he needed it like a hole in the head or something, and it's like, and she like paused the show to be like, that is not in the movie. Like, she did that a couple different times, and she was like angry about the idea that was originally in the script almost. But she did a really terrific impression of Madeline Kahn, and she was probably the MVP of the whole thing. I mean, like I said, everybody did a terrific job, but I really loved what Jillian Bell did in that performance. So yeah, I mean, it's always fun to see these characters that especially in a movie that I've seen as many times as I have something like Clue, to see different people interpret them and interpret those words in a slightly different way. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because they aren't trying to give, the line ratings from the movie. They're doing their own interesting spin on things. That's very cool. I didn't know that Jensen was doing these events. I'm going to have to keep an eye out for future events. But anyways, let's move on to the news. A few weeks ago, we were talking about Men in Black. They are rebooting Men in Black, and now I guess Chris Hemsworth is in talks to star.
Yeah, so Sony wants to relaunch their Men in Black franchise, and for a while they were talking about that idea of blending Men in Black with the 21 Jump Street franchise, but that idea is dead now. So now they're looking for a new cast, and right now Chris Hemsworth is in negotiations to star in the film. According to the story, they're looking for a white character, a black woman, and an older man for the three leads of the film. And it's going to be both a reboot and also sort of like a sequel, sort of like Jurassic World, where it takes the established world of the franchise but adds a whole new set of characters and a whole new storyline to it. And it's due out in 2019, so they better get cracking on this.
Now, is the same director attached? Who is it? F. Gary Gray?
It says he's still in talks, so he's not finalized yet, but he's still in talks to direct.
Because when this news first hit the web, I was thinking to myself, how great would it be if Taika Waititi directed this movie, especially with this connection to Chris Hemsworth? I feel like he would be the perfect kind of guy to fill this kind of wacky franchise.
That's true. I mean, nothing against F. Gary Gray. I just don't really think of F. Gary Gray as like a comedy director, which this franchise is primarily a comedy. But maybe he'll surprise us when he takes us over, and maybe he's been hoping to make a comedy all this time. So we'll see.
I think he directed Be Cool back in like 2005. I'll have to double check that, but hopefully his comedic timing has grown a little bit since then. But I mean, like, straight out of Compton, there's a lot of funny stuff in that. I mean, I wouldn't call that movie a comedy, but there's a lot of good comedic moments in there. So yeah, maybe this will work.
Maybe.
So I'm not sure I trust him from a comedic side of things. Anyways, let's move on to The Rocketeer. I think like a year or so ago, we heard that Disney was talking about writing with Max Winkler a Rocketeer sequel reboot called The Rocketeers, and now they have announced a Rocketeer animated series coming to Disney Junior in 2019. What do we know about it, Ben?
Yeah, so the Rocketeer is based on Dave Stevens' comic, which is about it's set in like the 1930s in LA, and it's about a stunt pilot who discovers a prototype jetpack, and he uses it basically to fight Nazis. The movie, or the comic, was adapted into a movie in 1991. That movie is really terrific. Joe Johnston directed it. It's one of the best comic book movies ever made, I think. And I was really excited about the film sequel, as Peter just mentioned. But yes, it seems as if Disney Junior has jumped the film sequel in line, and they are going to be producing a new show that is just called The Rocketeer, and it's going to be aimed at 2 to 7-year-olds. And they're going to be releasing a batch of new episodes. And each episode is going to have 2 11-minute stories in it and an original song in each episode. So I'm really hoping that there's going to be a song about how Nazis are terrible, because that's like one of the big things in The Rocketeer. It follows a young girl this time who receives a surprise package on her birthday revealing that she's next in line to become the Rocketeer. So that's kind of a cool little gender-swapped twist there. And that actually is something that the Rocketeers, the planned film sequel, plans to incorporate as well. I think that movie, if it ever gets made, is supposed to be sort of passing the jetpack down from Cliff Secord to a young black female pilot in a story that's supposed to be set about 6 years after the events of the movie. So there's a lot of Rocketeer stuff going on right now.
Now, it's been a very long time since I've watched children programming. I mean, I guess I watch Star Wars Rebels every week, but aside from that, it's been a long time. Is that something usual where they do a episode that's broken down into like mini storylines?
So I was just thinking about that, and when I wrote the article, I was reminded that a lot of TV shows and animated cartoons and stuff like that, when I was growing up, I feel like they were split like that. I feel like episodes of like Tiny Toon Adventures and shows like Doug on Nickelodeon and stuff like that. Yeah, I feel like they were often broken into basically episodes were split in half, and I'm not sure if that's just because kids that young probably don't have the attention span to narratively track a story that lasts 30 continuous minutes, but I think it's kind of a cool throwback, and I don't know if I'm ever going to watch this animated Rocketeer show because it's aimed at 2 to 7 year olds, but I love the idea of the Rocketeer being a property that they consider viable and something that hopefully will introduce that character and that story to a new generation of kids who will hopefully grow up and discover Dave Stevens' comics and the movie and all that. So yeah.
I really liked Tron Legacy, and then when the Disney Channel was coming out with an animated series, I was like, I'm totally going to watch that. And I still have not seen more than a trailer of that series. So
I think that had a really good voice cast, didn't it? Like Elijah Wood was in it or something. Maybe Mandy Moore did voice work on that show.
Yeah, and a lot of people loved it too. So I do need to catch up on it at some point. But let's move on. Let's move over to another Disney property, and that is Solo: A Star Wars Story. We kind of had some idea of where this takes place in the Star Wars timeline, but now we have an idea of exactly when it takes place in the Star Wars canon. Chris, what do we know?
Yeah, so like you said, Peter, we pretty much already knew where Solo would take place, and that's, before A New Hope and after Revenge of the Sith. So Del Rey Books, who publish all the Star Wars spin-off novels, released it's actually a neat looking timeline where you can scroll through and see where all the books take place as well as the films. And thanks to this, we know now, obviously it takes place after Episode 3. Solo takes place a little bit before Star Wars Rebels, and it takes place also at least 2 books worth before Rogue One and Episode 4, A New Hope. And that's I like that because it confirms that, unlike Rogue One, which ends literally right before A New Hope begins, there's going to be some time between Solo and A New Hope. So I remember after I saw Rogue One, I was like, that the Han Solo movie is probably going to end with them walking into the cantina and meeting Luke. They're going to just go with that very predictable ending, but this confirms that they're actually not going to end it that way. So that's one thing to look forward to.
See, now you say that's like that like it's a good thing, but when I hear you say that, Chris, the only thing I can think in my mind is the reason why they didn't do that is for sequel potential. Because, they're going to make Solo 2 a Star Wars story, and that will fill in the gap in between Solo 1 and A New Hope.
See, I hadn't thought of that, but now I'm depressed again. So, it's definitely, I guess it depends on the box office. If Solo is a hit, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, because I don't think there'll ever be a Star Wars movie that isn't a hit, I wouldn't be surprised if they do start greenlighting more young Han Solo films.
And now I can't get out of my head, like, what would you call a sequel to Solo: A Star Wars Story? Because you can't call it Solo 2 a Star Wars story, right?
I don't know.
I guess you could call it Han, a Star Wars story.
Solos, a Star Wars story.
Yes.
I don't know. If you have an answer to that question, please send us an email at peter@slashfilm.com, peter@slashfilm.com. If we get a really good answer to the what should be the title of the sequel to Solo: A Star Wars Story's sequel, I will feature it on this podcast. Okay, next up, Atlanta Season 2 is going to premiere, but it's actually not called Season 2, right, Ben? It's called...
Yes, that is correct. It's called Atlanta Robin Season.
Why?
ROBBIN'. And so it's called Robin Season because apparently the new season is set right before Christmas time, which one of the characters explains that as Christmas approaches, everybody has to eat, and essentially that's the time when crime increases because people get desperate to be able to feed their families and buy Christmas presents and stuff like that. So that's the general sense of why it's called Robin Season. But also apparently that theme of theft and robbing is something that is layered pretty heavily into Season 2 of Atlanta. So it seems like there's a metaphorical layer to it as well.
Wait, before you go on, is this something that any other huge TV series has done? I know Chris would probably have the answer to this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head. Chris, do you know?
What, change the title?
No,
Yeah.
change the name of the season, because like this isn't season 2. Like that's one thing that bothers me about get off my lawn. But it bothers me about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that I feel like in 10 years to go back and watch those things in order, because there's no numbers except for the Iron Man sequels. You really have no idea. Like you'll have to like consult a chart.
I mean, I guess the best example would be American Horror Story and also now American Crime Story, where the new seasons aren't called season 2. They have a whole new title where it's, American Horror Story, Asylum, stuff like that. But beyond that...
Yeah, but they're singular stories. I feel like you don't...
That's true, yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Anyways, the first reviews have hit the web, and Ben, you did a roundup for the site. Is Atlanta season 2 or Robin season as good as the first season of Atlanta?
So as of the time that I was writing the article, which was just a few minutes ago, it had about 20 reviews in on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was rated 100% fresh on the tomato meter. So, I mean, I know we've talked about how Rotten Tomatoes is definitely not the end-all be-all of criticism, and it's always dangerous to sort of reduce something down into a single number, but it does seem that critics are really enjoying the new season. So I grabbed a few excerpts from a lot of the reviews that are out there. It seems like the critics were given the first 3 episodes of the new season. I should also say that that Atlanta Robin season premieres tomorrow night. So it's Thursday, March 1st, 2018 at 10 p.m. on FX. So set your DVRs because the show has been off the air for like over a year while Donald Glover has been off filming Solo: A Star Wars Story. So yeah, the general sense of the second season of Atlanta is that while the first season got pretty surreal, the first 3 episodes anyway tend to actually ground things a little bit more. The excerpt from The Observer says, when expectations have been subverted to such a degree, as they were in the first season, audiences will come to expect even greater offbeat twists and turns the second time around. But that's the genius of Atlanta Season 2. In its first 3 episodes, it trades in the genre breaking of Season 1 for a more linear story that grounds everything while still maintaining the more daring choices made the first time around. And Uprock says that there are still absurdist touches in the margins, like Darius becoming convinced that all of the Florida Man headlines he sees on the internet refer to the same person. And while there are still some audacious shifts in tone, like a largely dramatic cameo from an unrecognizable Cat Williams in the season premiere, it all feels more of a piece and a bit more down to earth than the first season. So, it sounds like there's definitely a lot of the same stylistic touches that are that carry over from the first season, but it sounds like they're going a little bit more internal instead of expanding the weirdness of season 1.
Did you guys watch the first season?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's very, it's like borderline experimental. Some of the stuff that they were doing in that show is really crazy. Chris, did you watch it?
I've seen the first. I actually just started watching it now to get caught up for the second season. So I've seen a few episodes of the first season, but I haven't finished it yet. But I'm enjoying it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny, so well shot for a comedy, so clever at times. I definitely lean more towards the I like it when it's more grounded and less, crazy. So these reviews seem promising to me. But let's move on from Atlanta to another TV series, and that is the TV show adaptation of Snowpiercer. It's getting a new showrunner. Chris, what do we know?
Josh Friedman was the original showrunner for the TNT adaptation of Snowpiercer, and TNT picked up the show to series, and then less than 2 weeks later, Josh Friedman left. It was cited as creative differences, but he later went on Twitter and said he was actually forced out because TNT just didn't, I guess, want to work with him. So now Graham Manson, who is one of the co-creators of Orphan Black, has just taken over, and he is the new showrunner. He also wrote the indie horror movie Cube. I don't know if anyone has seen Cube, but it's a movie where people are trapped in a giant cube, and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So he is the new showrunner for Snowpiercer, which is supposedly going to debut sometime this year.
Now, I've only watched the first season of Orphan Black, but it was really good. I watched some of the second season, and it just for whatever reason it fell off my list. Is this good news for the Snowpiercer series?
I don't know. I mean, I haven't yet to get into Orphan Black. It's kind of strange. It's not a great sign that Josh Friedman helped develop the show. He helped write the pilot that got the show picked up, and then he was instantly fired. I mean, that's not the greatest sign, but I'm definitely curious about the show. It's got a great cast. I mean, Jennifer Connelly's in it. Davy Diggs from Hamilton is in it. So, and I love the film. So I'm very interested to see what they do with this as a series. But it's not off to the best start to instantly fire the guy who developed it. So I guess we'll see.
Yes, and we've been covering Moviepass since the inception of their $10 a month unlimited access movie subscription plan. And recently, Moviepass has filed a lawsuit against one of their competitors. Chris, what do we know?
Yeah, so there's another service called Cinemia, which I have never heard of, but they do basically the same thing where you buy a card and you can use it to see films. And now Moviepass is alleging that Cinemia stole basically two specific patents off of the Moviepass app to use for their platform. And so now Moviepass is taking them to court. So we'll see how that turns out.
Do we know what these patents actually are?
It's not the specifics, but it's basically involves both the checking in feature to check in, at the theater where you're seeing. And it's also the prepaid debit card idea is what they're alleging as well. So, I mean, it seems kind of broad because I'm sure there's more to it that, the actual lawsuit gets into, but that's the gist of it, of what they're alleging Cinemia stole from them.
Well, this is how they're going to make their money, by suing others with their patents.
Yes.
But I've actually heard of Cinemia because I guess it's kind of big in LA. When I'm using Instagram, there's ads for it all over my Instagram feed, my Facebook feed, probably because I look up a lot of movie stuff. And it's basically like Moviepass. You pay, I think there's a plan for $15 a month. And with that $15 a month, you get, actually no, it's $34.99 a month. I'm sorry. $34.99 a month normally. You get 3 movie tickets with no, the difference between this and Moviepass is obviously you can't see a movie a day. And, the 3 movie tickets can be IMAX or 3D. So, and you're not restricted to movie theater. You can use it at any movie theater in Los Angeles. So there's some benefits there. To me, in LA, a IMAX movie ticket could be $20. So if I was seeing, IMAX and 3D movies multiple times a month, this could be a deal to save money. But if I'm just willing to go to the 2D version of the movie, I think Moviepass is still the best bet because obviously, they're losing so much money doing it. But yes. So, what do you think is going to happen out of this lawsuit? Do you think this is a plan for them to get money, or do you think they're trying to shut them down?
I think they're just trying to get rid of their competition, honestly. I don't know if Cinemia will go away because of this, but it just seems to me that Moviepass, they want to corner the market on this, subscription service idea, and anyone who starts cropping up with their own now is going to be in their crosshairs, so to speak.
But is that even competition? You're like a $35 service for 3 tickets a month up against a $9 service for, 30 movies a month, theoretically.
I think the big piece of contention would be that they stole the tech, right?
Yeah.
Or that's the allegation. So I think Moviepass couldn't stop other competition from popping up. It's just this specific one they're saying they stole stuff, right?
Yeah. No, it's definitely within their legal right. But okay, next up, we're going to go into the spoiler room and talk a bit about some Westworld Season 2 casting. So I guess, we're putting this in the spoiler room because there's some casting here of some people coming back to the show that you might not want to know are coming back to the show, but it's also at the same time some casting that HBO themselves has announced. And it's also for a show that we've seen, if you've seen the first season, does some fun things with, timelines and whatever. So, just because these people are coming back doesn't mean necessarily anything, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there's always the chance that these people will pop up in future trailers and stuff like that too. But it's basically just, this is a vague spoiler warning for, just like a blanket spoiler warning. If anybody hasn't caught up with the season yet, or if you have any interest in catching up before season 2 comes out and you're worried about being spoiled, maybe tune out now. But otherwise, it's probably safe for everybody else.
Okay. So who has been cast in Westworld season 2?
So it's not really new cast. It's just returning people and where we're going to meet up with them at the start of the upcoming second season. So Elsie Hughes, who was played by Shannon Woodward, she is the behavioral programming guru of Westworld. She was kidnapped in the first season or mysteriously vanished, and it appears
I love her character so much, and I'm friendly with Woodward. And when she got kidnapped in the episode, I sent a direct message to her, and I was like, I am praying for Elsie right now. and it was also like a thing where I saw it like a few weeks in advance because we were seeing press screener copies. But I am so glad that she's coming back.
Yeah, and she was, like you said, she was sort of, whisked away, and it seemed as if Bernard/Arnold may have been choking her to death at one point, but it turned out that she survived that attempt on her life. Stubbs, who is the head of security, who's played by Luke Hemsworth, was basically, he encountered a group of the Ghost Nation hosts, which are a tribe of quote-unquote bloodthirsty savages who would occasionally pop up in the show as this sort of secretive, dangerous force of like Native Americans. And both of them survived. Lisa Joy, who's the co-showrunner of Westworld, says that those characters, both of them, they're finally getting to experience Westworld as guests and not in the managerial halls, but I'm not sure they're enjoying their experience, she says. Tessa Thompson's character, who is, her character's name is Charlotte Hale, is the board member of Delos Incorporated, who sort of oversees a lot of the activities, the business side of Westworld. She spent season 1 trying to push Anthony Hopkins' character, Dr. Robert Ford, out of his key position, and she is going to be coming back as well. We weren't sure at the end of season 1. She's attending this party inside Westworld, and that's when the android uprising happens, and Dolores, Evan Rachel Wood's character, starts firing a gun into the crowd. So it's sort of unclear, or it was unclear if Charlotte Hale survived, but she's definitely coming back. Lisa Joy says that she's back and causes trouble. She went from this controlled person playing this chess game with Ford. He takes out her king and queen in one fell swoop. Now she's left at the mercy of the hosts like everyone else. And then the only other people that I want to mention really quickly are the Man in Black, and AKA William. It's revealed in the season 1 finale that those characters are one and the same. So Ed Harris and Jimmy Simpson play the same character on different points on the timeline. The older version, the Man in Black, took a bullet in the arm at the end of season 1 when the android sort of came out of the woods at him, and it was unclear what his fate was going to be, but we know that he gets a bit of damage done to him, that's for sure, says Ed Harris. And then we know that we're going to see flashbacks to Jimmy Simpson's version of that character, the earlier version, as well as flashbacks of Robert Ford, the character played by Anthony Hopkins. Hopkins is not coming back, I don't think, in season 2, but we're going to see another actor play a younger version of that character. And we're going to see season 2 explore the early days of the park, and we're going to learn how Jimmy Simpson's William became such a prominent figure in Delos, and sort of how he is able to exert so much influence over the park.
Interesting. So we're still going to see some multiple timelines. I'm wondering, you mentioned with Elsie and Stubbs that they're back, and last time we saw them, they were both kind of in dangerous situations with within the park. Do you think that we will see them aligned with the androids?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think so one of the other characters, the really arrogant head writer, whose character's name is Lee Sizemore, he's played by Simon Quarterman. I think he is going to be a captive of Maeve in the beginning of season 2. So I'm wondering if Stubbs and Hughes are going to face the same kind of fate, where the androids are going to essentially flip the script and like enslave the guests in the park. As they were sort of quote unquote enslaved in the first season. So I think things are not looking great for them. But I expect them to to have some serious trouble in season 2.
And the other question is, do you think, we're going to run into, I'm not sure if either of you guys watched Battlestar Galactica, but they introduced this interesting aspect of Cylons being skin jobs and being undetectable because they look just like humans. And obviously, Westworld season 1 was playing with that. Westworld season 2, we're bringing back people we thought were at the end of their lives. Do you think it's a possibility that they're going to play with this idea this season that, these people might not be them? They may be reincarnated as robot versions of them?
I mean, yeah, that was actually my very first thought when it was, announced that characters I thought were pretty much dead were coming back, that there's a pretty good chance they'll be robots. But at the same time, there's also a pretty good chance the show's going to keep you guessing as to whether or not that's true until the last possible moment.
Yes. Chris, you talked about, entertainment as a math equation of trying to be solved by the internet. And, while I don't like that with a lot of entertainment, I love that with Westworld. And I can't wait to dive into season 2 and, read all the Reddit chatter and start up my Westworld, mysteries, article series again. Which was a lot of fun with the first season. Like this is, I know I said this in the past, but this is one of those shows that is just a joy to watch live in real time because you're participating with that, with everybody else who is watching it and trying to, I guess, immerse themselves and solve the mysteries. That does it for today's edition of Slash Film Daily. Chris, where can people find more of your work online?
I'm at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at CEvangelista413.
Ben, where can people find more of your work?
You can track me down at slashfilm.com and on Twitter at Ben Pearson.
You can find me at slashfilm on Twitter. You can find all the stories we've talked about today on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, all the popular podcast apps. Please go to iTunes, give us a rating, write us a review, tell your friends, spread the word. We will see you tomorrow.